Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Keith Jones. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for making time.
Oh, thank you for including me. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. The title of this podcast, which I'd love you to kick off, is Get to the Root. You want to kick it off?
Yeah, I think what we're talking about when we're talking about roots is we all have feelings and we wonder where they come from. And sometimes what we do is we tend to focus on the minutia of what somebody said that offended you or why you're justified in feeling a certain way. At least for me, I'm always concerned about overreacting. I tend to overreact. I tend to get angry first, and then I don't even examine where that comes from until later. And what I've tried to do in the last couple of years is when that creeps up for me, I try to focus on getting to the root. What is the real reason why I'm so angry about this? Why do I feel like I'm uh, being a victim of time or being a victim of somebody else's harsh words or someone else's misunderstanding or someone else's rejection? And usually what I do is go down a rabbit hole about why they're wrong in feeling that way instead of looking at the root of why I feel the way I feel. And usually for me, it involves I guess a feeling that where it comes from is that I'm unlovable or I'm harsh or I'm weak or all of the things that I don't like about myself creep up. And that's the reason why I don't see them when it happens in the moment. I'm sort of blind to that. So I act out and make it about other people. But the root cause of whatever the emotion is that I'm feeling has to do with something inside of me that I need to look at. And usually, when I'm able to tease out what it is that troubles me, it has to do with one of those feelings: guilt, anxiety, not measuring up, not being liked, being unlovable, all of those things that all humans struggle with. And so, my experience has been when I get to the root, the joy of it, the good part of it is that there's relief. Once I'm honest with myself about it, then I can say, oh, okay, I get it. And then I can go further and say, well, where does that come from? How did you end up feeling that way as opposed to feeling strong in the moment or not caring about what somebody else did? And then as you peel back the onion layers, you can see in your own life how this has become a theme. And in my case, that was a very, how would you put it? Destructive? That's too strong. It was something that was in the way of getting between how I was and who I wanted to be. So for me, getting to the root is really important, and it's very tough because you have to look and be honest with yourself about what the causes of your feelings are. And usually they're things you don't like to look at, but they have a cause. And once you're able to tease out what it is that's behind the acting out or the feeling of whatever you're feeling, you can deal with it. And it's a much easier way to go through life, I found.
Yeah, I completely agree, Rick. You got to get to the root of it. And the root is within, it's not outside of you. And I think that's where I've gone wrong in the past. I mean, you hear these things, or I've heard these things about don't give your power away to other people. That to me is a misrepresentation of what the ego or what the personal self does. I mean, it's kind of, I guess, for me, it's kind of a cop out of no responsibility, of taking no responsibility of what you have within your own control to do. Like you're not giving your power away to someone else. It's not like someone else is taking your power and doing something with it. Is that you have not mastered your personal self. At least that is for me. Like haven't gotten to the root. And so the power is within, it's not outside of you, and not outside of me. And when I am mindful of that, then that's where my journey of liberation from my lower self begins and ends. And it's amazing how a shift in attitude about that can change everything. I mean, because what it allows for, at least in my case, is that and this is what it has debunked this idea of giving my power away to other people, is that when I've said I can handle this regarding what somebody else's behavior, actions, or what they do and don't do, when I have said that I'm going to master this, and that being the insecurity or feeling offended or whatever the case may be, they don't change at all. But my response to them completely changes. My relationship to them completely changes. How I can be around them or the other person that I had blamed or affixed as being the problem, how none of that, how that's not a problem. For example, at work, I had to master myself with this narrative about a manager that I report up to being difficult to work with. The manager's the same way, but I've changed, and now the manager's style doesn't bother me at all. And that has been true of almost everything. Is I look to go to the root, and the root is within. In my relationships, when I look back on some of the grievances that I had with people that I've dated in the past, when I look back on all of those, the ones that I grew the most from are the ones in which I took responsibility of how I was going to be in the relationship, regardless of how they showed up.
Yeah.
Ones that I grew the least in were the ones that where I said, well, I don't like this about them. I won't be in a relationship like that again. Well, I didn't grow from that experience. I just closed off about what I would tolerate in a relationship moving forward, but which meant that I limited what my experiences would be in a relationship because I thought that this new person did something, said something that was similar to the old person. I'm not putting up with that, but they're not the old person. They're someone different. This is the new experience, a fresh experience. And when I do that, it's been really, really helpful and liberating for me moving forward in my relationships. But it goes back to what you said at the very beginning, Rick, is you have to get to the root of it. Why do I feel insecure? And don't make it about someone else. Why do I feel like, someone else got credit and I didn't? Why do I feel like I'm not always included when people are including you all the time, but your narrative is I'm not being included? And just things like that. And in the rare instances when people haven't included me, I'm like, thank you. I don't like going to weddings anyway. Like, you did me a favor. Like, oh, what? I didn't get invited to a graduation or a baby shower. Like, seriously? Like, how did you know that was on my wish list? So I mean, like, you start to like really get leverage. And I love when you say that you get leverage over your lower self. And in that, man, it's liberating. It really is. Rick,
Yeah.
what would you like to say?
I just wanted to say that I think, all of these podcasts basically, I think reflect both of our interests in not being satisfied by the superficial level that we used to operate in that brought us so much pain and suffering.
Yes.
But the paradox is that in order to start that journey, you have to begin with self-awareness. And instead of looking outside, we have to look inside. And that's very hard and very challenging. It's not something that we're accustomed to doing.
Mm.
Blaming and finding fault, that's what we're experts at. Blaming and finding fault in others. So the self-awareness part of it, man, that's tough. And you'll be surprised, not you, the rhetorical you, we'll be surprised, all of us, as we start down that journey of trying to be the best person that we can be and being in touch with our higher self and not suffering any longer, begins with that self-awareness. And even though it's difficult at first and it feels completely counterintuitive because you're always looking, at another cause, not yourself, of whatever your suffering is. Once you master that self-awareness and you're monitoring it, man, Keith, just like you talk about with how you deal with your work environment, as soon as something comes up, you're on it. You remember, oh yes, oh yeah, here I am. Here's the lower Keith. Here's the lower Rick. Here's Rick 1.0. You know what the suffering is associated with that. And that's not who you want to be.
Right.
That's not who I want to be anymore. I've done that. I've mastered that crap. I don't want it in my life anymore. But self-awareness is difficult and it is required in order to make progress, to get to the point where you want to be who you really are and who your higher self is.
100% Rick. Thank you so much, Rick, for the show and for your insights. I always learn from you. I love you.
I love you and thanks for being with me and being my buddy. I really, really look forward to this. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you, Rick.